specifically as a cover, I think it's this really beautiful opportunity to have a lot of understanding of your own instrument and its capabilities, and then also trying to, be malleable into how you can bring your own instrument into multiple characters and try and highlight, their differences and approach them each, a little from the same vocal foundation, but with like different nuance. So, understanding my voice and being able to feel confident in those choices, and also how your voice is your job, is also like a lot of it's when you're an understudy there's a lot of self study and self work and like understanding what you're capable of so that you can like try and like work on those things when you're not getting to do it every day.
I feel like the breathing that is required for rap specifically is different than like for singing. Um, and in terms of like differentiating between all the characters, we sort of talk about the sort of connection between the voice and the body. And for me, a lot of the way that I approach these characters is from a physical place first. I guess mental first because mental affects the physical and then the physical affects the voice. So kind of approaching it from that way. So I'm like, oh yeah, G Dubs feels like in my in my mind, it's like his like thighs and like butt area are very heavy, so that's going to affect where his sort of center of gravity is, and then thusly affects the way he speaks and the way he raps and the way he sings. Um, and then yeah, reverse is like a Burr, where I'm like, oh yeah, it's very much like a pulled up energy and very sort of contained, and so then everything just has a bit more of a specificity and intention to it, and it's like if I move left, it's for a reason. If I sing this note this way, or if I option up in this way, it's like that is for a very specific reason because it's yeah. All that to say that yeah, it's the voice is everything, and I think sometimes we can forget that it's like there's the vocal, there's a rap, but then there's also speaking, and in our show like the rap typically is just a monologue or a dialogue scene like put to music, and so trying to differentiate the characters that way as well, so that Hamilton speaks differently than Burr does, and he sounds differently than King George, and he sounds different than Lafayette. Yeah, just trying to find the mental life of the person, the emotional life of the person, and then that trickles down to how they would carry themselves in the world, in private versus in public, in front of this specific person versus that specific person, um, and yeah, it just kind of I think helps me to settle into the characters because people are always asking like, well, how do you memorize all those lines and how do you not get confused? And I'm like, well, because it actually feels different in my body. Like Hamilton feels starkly different than Burr does physically. So yeah, once I'm in that space, I'm like, I can't get confused because I'm like, I don't feel like anybody else but Aaron Burr,
It was such a wonderful fit. It was such a blessing. And I never thought I'd go back to New York. I thought this is my retirement plan. I'm going to just enjoy singing professionally while I can, travel the world, and then I'll move on to something else. And then so all this to say, I heard about Hamilton. I listened to it, and I thought for the first time in 5 years, so like the 5 years I've been gone from the business, the first time I was like, I really want to do that show. I want to do that show. I think that show wants what I do. And this show feels so important to me. Like I had, for so many reasons. And I decided at the end of one of my cruise ship contracts, I wanted to like kind of be around in New York for a minute and see if a round of Hamilton auditions came up because I'd never like been in the city when they were happening. It was my, I got the audition. It was my second audition back in the city. The first week I was there, and the second week I had just moved out of my storage unit when I got the call that I had booked the Philip tour. And so that honestly felt like this moment of I had taken so much time away from the business. I didn't think I was going to come back. I thought I knew what it was. I thought I was like complete in my journey in New York. And so like this one show created this whole inspiration of no, there's more for me to explore. It means so much to me. Look at this story I get to tell. I'd been feeling very limited in how people were using me as a storyteller in New York because of many reasons. And like, yeah, so Hamilton has really been a moment through this whole journey where it's all just kind of aligned with these are the stories I want to tell with the people I want to tell them at the moment in my life. And like it all has like kind of met. And so it's been that Hamilton has really been the culmination of like, I have more, there's more that I want to be exploring in this world. And it's been great.
One of the biggest was my first regional show, which was Ragtime down in Austin. And um, yeah, it was my first time just like being able to witness, like, okay, this is a job that people commit their whole lives to and get really good at. And like, there's a structure to it, and there's a intentionality to it, and a work ethic that I was able to witness. You know, like the first music rehearsal we had, all the principals were off book. And I was like, huh, because at that point I had only done, high school theater, like middle school. Um, so yeah, I didn't even, it was like literally there was the way I worked prior to that and the way I worked after was like totally different. Because after that moment, I was like, oh yeah, I'm going out for a bunch more theater. I'm, going to be the person in the room that the director doesn't have to worry about. So like I'm coming in off book on everything, lines, music, doesn't matter. So like I can just be in here and play with everybody and just soak up everything. Um, yeah, it was really sort of a paradigm shift for me. For Hamilton, I tend to, it's a lot of like I'll grab like some free weights, and like it's a lot of like lifting and just getting this sense of like pushing against something. And I also have like different playlists for every character I play. Um, because I feel like music is very important, and affects you very differently depending on what the music is. And so I'm like, yeah, like Hamilton will listen to very different music than George Washington would. Um, and also that helps me in my warm ups to, like the vocal warm up is mostly the same across the characters, but uh, once I finish the warm up proper, I'll start singing music from the playlist. So then like my voice gets situated into that zone of like, oh yeah, there's warmer, maybe darker tones to G dubs, but there's like a more jazzy kind of um, flair to Burr and whatever.
Mine comes in from I living every day as if I'm going to do the show, which can be hard if you're not going on very frequently. You start to feel like it's hard to not be neurotic about that. But for me, that means like when I eat, when I exercise, how much energy I spend throughout the day. Because like I really hate singing on a full stomach. And especially in those corsets, like it's uncomfortable. As my diaphragm expands, I start to get heartburn. Like I hate exercising on a full stomach. So it's like it's timing. And I feel like a lot of the preparation is without driving yourself like into neuroses, being consistent with that preparation and reservation of energy and diligence, even when you're not going on very frequently. So just like all of the outside works that when I'm on stage, I don't have to think about anything else. I know my body's right, my voice is right. I know my choices have like my placement choices have been made so that when I'm on stage, the only thing I have to tell is the story. And that's what's like super super important to me is just being able to, and that's the same with like any kind of preparation for auditions. As I've gotten older and learning what you need more, it's like just put in the work so that way when you have the chance to perform in any capacity, that's all you have to think about.
I would also add that like something that I have done for I guess years now, is trying to sing under not the best conditions. So like if I, wake up one morning and I'm like, oh, I'm congested or I'm sick or I've got some drainage or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, like singing in that place, because then, yeah, God forbid, like, you're in a show and it's like, oh, you're on, but you haven't warmed up or you're under the weather or whatever. It's like I've already figured out how to navigate singing all of these songs in whatever physical state I'm in. So yeah, like it helps you with that confidence of like, you can throw me on literally whenever and I'm not worried about it. I tend to, this is actually before the show and after the show, spend a few minutes in complete silence. So yeah, before the show starts, like I'll have listened to most of my playlist and I'll stop the music. The door is already closed, and I just kind of like sit there and, yeah, just sort of like really let me and the character kind of go like this. And then after the show, yeah, it's kind of similar. Like I don't really play any music or anything. I just kind of get out of the clothes and like dresser will leave, and I just kind of let myself sit for a second and yeah, sort of disconnect from the show. And then I can go be a human. Yeah, eat some food and call it a day.
I would say two things from like a professional standpoint, career wise, that your career does not have to, nor will it look like anyone else's. And just letting go of those expectations early on so that you can look, you're your own business, and it's important that you are keyed into what you need to make you happy and what kind of work you enjoy. If that's sitting in a long run for 5 years, fantastic. If that's being out on the road, fantastic. If that's covering, amazing. And I think it's very easy to have one type of career that you walk into this business with feeling like is going to make you feel successful. And so just knowing that the timeline of it and what it looks like is completely your own, I think gives you more opportunity to really self-reflect and ask what makes you happy. Because
Mm,
there is not one way to do this business. And prescribing that and looking at your peers and thinking that that's the road and that's the way to do it, um, is just it just gets you in your head more than you have to in a business that where you're already going to be living in your head in this like in this journey of one. And then yeah, I would say just being open to that. And I had one other thing I was going to say as being a cover. Oh, also, and I think comes from being a cover, is that when you're watching people, peers, other shows, evaluating work, encourage your opinions of other people's work to be positive about what are they doing that is successful, because you will learn so much more. I think I have found, and this is like a specific thing to like covering and trying to mine people for information, I have learned so much more about what I like, about what people do, and what I think is really cool, and like, oh, I love that, like, and in that moment of inspiration, that moment of, because that expands your toolbox. Instead of, sometimes I think we try to evaluate other people's work too critically because this business feels competitive, and you're just shutting yourself off to like information about like what you can use and what you can learn from. And so that would be the other thing, is I think just always try and watch people with as much generosity and with as much willingness and openness to learn from what they're doing, because I think that will make you a better performer a lot faster than being like, I don't like that. It doesn't serve any, and it doesn't create a generosity in how you interact with this world that is competitive. There's room for everyone.
mhm. And even if that stuff does come up, the sort of like negative thoughts, I'm like, for me, I've always, when I have those moments, then turned it inward and been like, okay, I didn't vibe with X, Y, and Z choice that this person made. Do I do that in my work? And trying to really like suss out and get critical about what I do,
Mm-hmm.
as well as borrowing from so many people and yeah, stealing the things that I think make them great, because that's only yeah gonna make you better and elevate your work and how you show up in the room. Is a deep awareness of self, and a
Mm-hmm.
deep appreciation for other people.